What's up guys, I'm Josh Sunga. I'm an artist and I'm going to show you guys a little bit about my sketching process using this Pilot G-Tech pen, 0.3, fine tip, doing thumbnail drawings. Cool.
And you're also going to be going through your sketchbooks too.
And I'm also going to be going through more historical sketchbooks, the old lines here. Okay. Well, so right now I'm just drawing huts of some sort. Let's see. Big shape. I don't even know where or what these are for. I'm kind of just looking for interesting shapes at this point. And you can see here too, I'm adding these smaller details or areas of noise with these like sticks. I'm kind of thinking it's like the foundation and the structure within these bigger shapes, but really it's just an excuse to get an interesting contrast, like a visual contrast between these big shapes, areas of rest, versus all these lines here. So let's see, I'm gonna try to figure out how to make this work. Maybe we'll connect it from the top. I like this gesture going through here though, so I don't want to eliminate that, so I'll try to follow that sweeping curve up top here. Keep it subtle, something like that. Oops, no worries, you just keep going. Another thing I'm doing here too is like I like the feeling of these big shapes. It kind of feels like it's crushing these smaller line shapes here. It's just a good visual contrast. It's literally just so that it feels and looks more interesting, as opposed to let's say if I draw it here, if this entrance down below was bigger and then the shape was also near the same size, it'd get a little boring. So let's check it out. I'm going to purposefully make a more boring design, and then we'll see how we could adjust that, make it more interesting after the fact. Actually, well, let's see. I'm having a hard time trying to make it boring because it's just against the designer's nature, I suppose. So I'm already trying to offset the design here and make it imbalanced. Just slightly, not too imbalanced, but if this is the center line down this way, I'm offsetting it here to, again, for visual interest. But the point of drawing this was to show less interesting proportions and then try to make it interesting. So this is kind of working for my purpose, like the shape of these smaller triangles create this medium shape, and this bigger shape is actually not too much bigger, so it could be more interesting. So let's see, we're gonna increase the contrast. I'm just drawing more lines here as I warm up. We're kind of thinking how to do that. So we're gonna probably move this up, simply because that's honestly the only area I could go. So let's see, let's do this, like one sweeping line down here. It's a little more interesting. And the silhouette, the original silhouette, like this line, I don't really even care about it. It's now less like a secondary detail to like this bigger shape that we've just created. So I also want to, I want to add some lines here, I'm not sure if this is gonna look good or not, but we're just gonna do it because I just want to explore really, like how these lines will look if it's maybe integrated, as if these stick structures are kind of exposed out at the top here. We'll see how it looks. but that's kind of part of how I draw. It's just really, you're just kind of clueless the whole time. Not really, but when you take a risk, you don't really know if it's gonna turn out well or not. See, these are too dark. That's not looking great to me right now. So we're gonna have to balance it out with something else. Put a line there, make it feel structural, purposeful. Even though I'm kind of trying to figure out a solution for this mistake. I don't really call it a mistake. I'm just gonna I kind of just forced my hand. I'm gonna have to figure out another visual solution to balance this out. Because as you can see now, this shape here, it's like another medium shape compared to this one, and it's getting boring. So let's check it out. Maybe I can make this shape. Oh, you know what? Maybe we can connect this whole shape. Make it one big. If you see that here, I'm gonna trace it out for you guys. I'm gonna connect the two, make it one big shape. That might be a more interesting statement. Yeah, that's actually that's cooler than what I had originally, at least I think. And I'm gonna move on because I don't want to keep nitpicking at one single design. I'm gonna just do that one little shape up top here because again, I just want to create these different visual contrasts. If you look at this one big silhouette shape, within that there's these lines because that was the original design. So there's kind of a big, medium, small. The proportions could be pushed, but we're drawing in pen here, so kind of just have to move on. So let's see, let's just try to get another interesting shape here. Let's find a comfortable spot. I'll just go to the next page. How about that? Do that. There's the ground plane. And we just kind of have to go with the intuition at this point, because it's more of an exploratory process, this thumbnailing process, just drawing small so you can see the overall design and you kind of have more control over it that way, just because of the scale. Right now I'm just drawing shapes. I don't even have a real design purpose other than the fact that these smaller shapes contrast this bigger shape, and it's also a counter movement. If you look at the gesture here, it's kind of pushing in. This shape here is kind of pushing this way, so there's that subtle contrast in movement. I want to keep the page cohesive too, so I'm going to add, I don't want all these bubbly shapes to just dominate the design. I want to add these smaller shapes, as I established before, like these stick structures, like holding up these more bubbly shapes. It could be like you know, those mud huts or something. I don't know, but right now the main concern is finding interesting shapes, interesting contrast within those shapes, interesting proportions. It all kind of melds together, like the design principles, so we're just gonna try to explore and talk about that as we keep going. I'm also comparing this design that I just made to all the other designs on the page so it doesn't get too repetitive. They're all huts with sticks and bubbly shapes, but I am still conscious of making each iteration at least somewhat unique. So let's keep going. I'm honestly gonna move on. Like this isn't perfect yet, but I'm gonna move on and see if another shape can inspire, and as I keep going I might come back to another design and make it more interesting. But really what's important about this process too is like this feeling of momentum. I don't want to get stuck. Like if I feel stuck, I'm just gonna I'm either gonna think really hard, like, okay, what's the next solution that I can come up with, and if it doesn't come naturally or longer than I would like, then I'll just move on. You see here too, like, I kind of repeated the same shape here because I was distracting myself talking, so did not want to create the same design, so I'm going to mirror it simply because it's different than the one I just made. So, and again, here's another critique I have for myself. So all these thoughts are kind of occurring while I'm drawing. This design is way too centered. If I keep going with this silhouette, it's either gonna be too simple. There's nothing wrong with simple, but that's not what I really want right now. If I wanted a bold statement or design that's fairly simple to create, so like here, I'll draw a smaller iteration of what this could be, but I don't want that right now. But here you go. That's what I have right now. The easiest or the most obvious direction to take is just to connect these two lines, make it like a pyramid-like shape. Kind of boring. We could try to offset the stability here within the shape, but we don't have much to work with here. So this might be interesting, like, okay, these internal shapes are contrasting this centrality, like this stable feeling here. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll figure it out. And as you guys can see too, like the skill cap here while I'm drawing is not very high. It's really just, if you can draw lines, and if you look at these drawings, it's really just wavy lines and then straight triangle shapes to like symbolize the sticks. So that's kind of why I like thumbnailing. It's just super easy way to explore different designs, ideas. So here, I'm moving on to this original one, and I'm just gonna, for the sake of visual interest again, I'm just gonna pull out the silhouette, just bring it out there. Don't know what I'm gonna do with it yet, but at least I know it's more interesting than this. Even though I do like that idea with the, as I mentioned, central silhouette. Here, we could draw that out. And then offset shapes within that. That's kind of cool. But again, I'm just a sucker for interesting silhouettes. So I have more to play with this one. So we're gonna keep going there. Again, don't know exactly where I'm going with this. I want to figure out where those stick shapes are gonna appear. Maybe something like this. Like it all converges towards that bottom left corner there. That could be cool. So what I'm thinking now is these nice sweeping lines up top. And then we're gonna contrast it with this rigid feeling here. And I'm even the way I'm applying the lines is like I'm tightening my hand so it feels, so that rigidity is kind of translated. Kind of cool. So again, this small triangle shape against this whole circular, these fluid motions up here. Cool. It doesn't, again, it's kind of like it's a superficial design. I don't know exactly like what purpose these huts are serving yet. So I want to kind of think about that too. I'm adding texture. Maybe there's moss growing on it, or it's just really doesn't matter. Like these dots can symbolize anything. It could be just like wear and tear. But I like moss. That moss also indicates an environment that we could possibly influence the design. If it's wet, that could be cool too. Like if there's water nearby, it'd be cool to see like these stick shapes submerged or something. Let's try to figure that out. So in order to do that, I'm gonna have to change the angle too, so we're gonna have to use a little bit of perspective knowledge, but the scale's so small it's really not that hard anyways. So there's some stick shapes. Let's say this is like a pond here. Cool. More stick shapes down here. I want to establish like where these stick shapes end, just so I can get an idea of like the foundation and get closer to an overall shape of the design. So I'm really dealing with the lines where the sticks meet the water here. Let's figure that out. I'm just gonna say the pond ends there, draw some grass there to just make that obvious. Like if this was a bigger scale, I'd draw like a frog jumping in right now, but at this scale it'd literally just be a dot, so I'm not gonna spend my time on that right now. But those are thoughts that kind of go through my head while I'm designing, like, oh, like these little moments, like, okay, maybe like this frog hops in, and then to me that's thoughts like, okay, that's kind of like a simple thought, like that's not too interesting, so maybe I'll think about, well, maybe something's hunting the frog, maybe this little kid's like chasing it or something, and I'm thinking about potential story moments as I'm drawing these huts, because alone, like stick huts, like these mud stick huts, they're cool shapes and all. That's a challenge in itself to make them cool, but even if they are cool shapes, you need a story for people to relate to and to bring more depth into the design as well. So I'm thinking about that. That's gonna come later, the story stuff, but I'm thinking about it. So that's kind of cool. I like the tall shape here. Let's see. Again, a lot of these decisions I'm making are just purely based off of intuition, but it's guided off of those things I mentioned beforehand. Contrast, does it add visual interest? Let's see. See, it's a bad habit of mine to like keep adding stuff. I was gonna keep going with these dark stick shapes, but I should probably leave it alone because it's a smaller shape compared to this. Again, I'm repeating myself. The small shape compared to this bigger shape. It's important though, it adds contrast, it's just more interesting. Simply put. Okay. So cool. That's cool. Maybe we'll add like tall, I don't know what that stuff's called, but the tall pond grass that just shoots out of the water. Just more stuff to add to the context, and it just helps me start imagining too, like where am I in this drawing? We've kind of established like there's this water environment or something. That started with the moss, like just adding these little dots, so you can kind of see how easy it is if you just kind of roll with it and you kind of think about like, oh, what does this texture represent? Because as I said, it could simply be wear and tear, and it could just end there. Or maybe it's like maybe there was a battle or something. That's kind of stretching it, but there could be like scars on this carapace-like structure. That could be another route to go. So we'll see. Let's move on to another hut. Oh, you know what? This would be cool too if this is now that we've established that this is near water. This would be a cool shot if this long structure was at the water side. So I'm gonna add those same pond grass stuff over here just to push that idea. And you know what? It's not pushing the idea enough, because it could literally just be grass on dry ground. So I'm gonna add lily pads just to get the point across. And I'm kind of cheating the perspective here because it's a front view, but I really don't care. It's just about the idea. And I can come back, and if I really like this idea, I'll come back and I'll draw it out correctly later. So, yeah, cheat, doesn't matter. It's about the idea and letting your imagination kind of run. So let's do one more. So I did a more horizontal oriented one, and then I did a more vertical one. So now, just to keep it more interesting for myself, I want to try, let's like get a diagonal gesture coming through. So we'll see. I don't know how it's gonna turn out, but we'll figure it out. So again, I want that diagonal gesture, so that means I'm not going to pull this line out. I wanted to originally, but because I want to maintain that intent I established beforehand, I'm going to bring it in. And it's going to be imbalanced, so we're going to also have to figure another thing out there. So let's see. I'm just adding these bumpy shapes, there's no real reason other than that I think it looks cool. So, and also, here's another thing. I want to contrast those bumpy shapes with these sharper lines, which could symbolize grass. But just as like a raw art element, like a visual element, those contrasts kind of help the viewer just give more interest. So again, I'm going to push that just to emphasize and exaggerate sharp, jagged grass lines, and then soft, gestural shapes here. Cool. And it's actually the design's kind of balanced out. It doesn't look like it's about to topple, so we kind of got lucky there. Let's see. I want to add those. I want a more interesting entrance too, because I'm looking around, I'm kind of doing the same thing everywhere, so maybe the entrance is not, you know what, maybe the entrance is like underwater or something, so I'm just gonna like do a opening here in the center. Literally just to switch things up for myself so I don't get bored. If you keep it interesting for yourself, then the viewers, whoever's looking at your drawing, is probably gonna go through the same or a similar journey as you. So let's figure out some cool shapes here. I don't want to. I could rush this stuff and it wouldn't affect the design too much, but if I slow down, I can notice, and I did all these smaller shapes up here, so maybe I want to do one larger shape down here. Again, for contrast. So I'm going to repeat myself, like a lot of this stuff is intuition. There's no real reason why I wanted this window up here. I just thought it would be different and it might look cool. But it's also guided by these decisions, these somewhat arbitrary decisions are kind of guided by like the design principles that you learn. Again, like shape contrast, proportion, varying proportions. And it's all for the sake of visual interest, at least at first. The hope is that we can fill these ideas, these designs, with something more interesting, with like a story. But that takes more time. So for now, we just draw. We could draw smaller to kind of speed this up, get more interesting designs faster. It's just literally the physical reality we live in. Like if you draw smaller, you can draw faster and kind of whip out ideas faster. So let's do that. We're speed designing. See, I'm almost scribbling at this point. But I like it. Like if it goes smaller, the level of render can kind of decrease and you can focus more on silhouette. It's almost more fun that way. So we're also, if you notice, I'm starting to repeat the same, like, single shape, one entrance. So I want to start introducing different rules. So maybe I'll add multiple pieces, all these different bubble shapes, and then I want to squeeze in these stick shapes. I want that feeling's important for me to capture in the drawing. Those adjectives are important, like to have this feeling that this opening here is getting squeezed. It's just it's almost subconscious. Like when the viewer sees that, they're not gonna say like, oh, that entrance is getting squeezed by these shapes, but they're gonna feel it, because that's just visually, that's how it's portrayed. So there you go, add some. And again, I'm looking at different designs and seeing what I did there. I see like the grass shapes, and I remind myself like, oh, okay, we could do with some of those shapes for variation. Where it's kind of integrating the structure into the environment as well. So that's cool. More shapes up here. Let's do a smaller one, just to contrast the design. So this is an even bigger picture. I want to contrast designs against each other. So within a design, you want to contrast the shapes and the elements within the design, and even on the page, you want to contrast the individual designs against each other. It's a good rule to have so you don't get monotonous on the page. So let's keep going. So I'm gonna go along the same path here that I went here, like multiple shapes rather than just one solid shape. And as I just mentioned, simply for the sake of variation and interest. So let's go, I'll do some scribbles there. Sometimes I like to force myself to scribble and just like remind myself like there's a certain quality and characteristic to the way you apply your lines. So if I do a quick motion here like that, like you can feel the gesture in that, as opposed to these rigid lines here. And it all that stuff, all those thoughts kind of compound and feed into your design. So cool. That's cool, but it's kind of similar. I'm not gonna beat myself up about it though. I'll try to make it different here by adding like platforms. And even if like this doesn't turn out super cool, it's so small, like I really don't care. And at least now I've introduced something new to the design with these platforms up top here. So if anything, there's some redemption, like, okay, that can feed into the next design. But I'm not gonna give up yet. I'm gonna see if we can make this look cool. I mean, it looks fine. I just have an issue with it being too similar there. So what I will do, there's a way to make it different with the entrance at least, because I'm not... Oh, you know what? I could change the silhouette. That's the thing. There's so many different ways to adjust a design, and you kind of just have to pick one. You don't really know which one's better. So we can make it taller. It's still a little centered to me, but we can offset it, as I said, with these platforms. Do you see this motion here? A little too boring, so we're gonna offset it with the motion of the gesture of the way these platforms are designed on top. The lesson there is there's always different solutions that you can find to, even if you feel that you've messed up a design, you can try to figure it out. You're not doomed, even if it is in pen, and you might come up with something that will surprise you. You know what? I'm just gonna do something crazy here and just add an even bigger piece. If I had, let's see. We'll do that and then we'll connect it with some stick shapes. And the design thinking is, that's as sophisticated as it gets. Stick shapes. I don't know if this is structurally sound or not. But again, my priority right now is just to make some interesting shapes that will inspire stories in my head. So I can imagine, like, if we had like a main character here, we'll draw some little stick dude. Like, he goes in here and then somehow he ends up outside, and he's gonna have to, for some reason, some video game reason, you have to make it to the top. That way, I'm thinking about how to make that journey more interesting visually. Kind of do that naturally as you keep doing this, because I wasn't necessarily thinking about that journey, but nevertheless, I still wanted to make these shapes, this element here, interesting. So that's kind of cool. It's like, it kind of splits. Maybe we could drag it down here. Maybe we add like a window up here, because it's huge. We want to establish the scale with smaller details. Cool. And at this point I could tell I should move on. It's not gonna get any cooler than that. Alright, I'll do a few more. For this one, I looked over and I saw this hanging ball shape. So that looks kinda, it's unique, right? So, at least compared to the previous designs. And I want to explore that hanging feeling, hanging ball feeling. Great concept art inspiration. So let's figure it out. So again, this is all just feeling it out. I'll get lazy here, I'll just scribble in those stick shapes, don't care. That's kind of cool. Then I'm gonna bring this out, boom. That's a cool statement. It's hanging here, there's this negative shape here, right? That's not too obvious, so what I want to do is maybe allude to some grass here. Tell the viewer, like, hey, this is ground plane. Here we go. And then when the structure, where the structure touches the ground, we'll add some texture. Just to push, it's kind of hard at this scale to really emphasize that this is a negative shape. But we make do, it's okay. And really, this is just for myself to explore ideas. It's a thumbnail, it's supposed to be rough and quick. So, that's cool, I like that one. All the other ones suck. Just kidding, let's see. Windows? No. Don't like the window, so I'm just gonna hide it with texture. We'll just leave it kind of vague. Could be windows, could be texture. The viewer will never know. Cool, I can move on. I like this triangle shape. So, what I want to do is kind of explore with it more. Just make it different. So, I see that little divot I made there. I'm going to exaggerate it on this next one. And also, I'm going to add stick shapes, like intersecting it. Just because I think that would look cool. And maybe this corner up here is a little bit lifted off the ground. It's kind of looking like a boomerang sunken into the ground. And these decisions I'm making are simple. It's just literally the motive is just like, I think it will look cooler. As opposed to just having this touch the ground. It's just a little more interesting. Nothing too sophisticated, really. So cool. Add more grass shapes. Honestly, I'm gonna move on. That was a quick one. Let's do another one. Let's do like one that's more tapered and vertical. That line is super wonky, and I'm kind of worried about it. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna justify that line, but we'll figure it out. Add a little sticks here. Make it structurally sound. Stick shapes. Stick shapes. It's structurally sound now. Will not fall over.
Hot chicks.
Hot chicks.
Shout out to Tony.
Shout out to Tony Guo. Back in the good old school days. There we go. Deviated from the triangle shape, but it's still there. Made it a little more sophisticated with those divots. Cool. A little simple, but I'm gonna move on because I don't know what to do with it. Because as I mentioned before, I just don't want to get stuck. We'll come back to it if need be. Cool. More sticks. More sticks. You know what? That's another interesting thing I could do is like, I've been mostly focused on the shape of the structure and everything, but maybe on this design I can focus more on making the stick shapes, the massive sticks, more interesting. Keep it interesting for myself because it's different. Because I could explore shapes all day long on this, but I'd be doing the same thing really at this point. Let's figure it out. Okay. So right now the issue is I'm contradicting myself because these stick shapes are not the primary, they're not the focal point right now. So the solution to that is simply add more and stay true to that intention. So I know it's gonna have to be a bigger shape than this, so I'm just gonna bring out the lines there. Kind of force my hand to figure it out, really. So let's see. Scribbles. More scribbles. It's getting very centered too, which I'm not into. Oh, you know what'd be cool? Boom.
Boom.
Boom. Confidence. I really have no clue though if this is gonna look cool, but now I get this feeling like, yeah, I'll write it down like a clawing hand. That's kind of the feeling I got. It's like if this were the palm and then I drew these outward lines stretching out like fingers, trying to like grab you like some creepy old lady or something. Those are the thoughts that go on in my head as I draw. Creepy old ladies grabbing you.
24-hour too.
Yeah, rubbing your shoulder awkwardly.
Those are the only two things you think about when you're drawing.
Yeah, and that keeps me going. I have to keep running.
Yeah.
If I don't get the right designs, I'm gonna feel the touch that yeah, anyways. Clawing hand. It's interesting. I like when those words come up in my head because it's like it adds more depth. Even if the viewer doesn't necessarily see that or make the same connection, like I enjoy that because it gives me a purpose for this design. It's like, okay, I want maybe we can add like a thumb shape here, because you wouldn't come up with those thoughts like or that shape without that reason. And that just kind of that came out randomly because I wanted more sticks. So that just kind of goes to show you don't I mean, not even that this design's that cool, but if you keep going and just for the sake of variation, you might come up with something cool. So even though I don't think that this design per se is like that cool, I like the concept, so I'll just draw it again, smaller, and try to nail it better, try to execute it better. Smaller scale so I have better control. I want that gesture, right? That clawing gesture, like reaching out, almost like overhanging. That's the beauty of drawing small too. It's like you can communicate those ideas easily. Like you see, I just a few quick lines. I spent like, I don't know, a few minutes on this one, and in a matter of seconds I get to redraw it and try to do it better. But that's the challenge. I have to let's see if it will actually be better or not. This is looking more like a literal hand, which could be cool, but who knows. We'll cap it off there. I want to extend that shape just for the sake of, it's like a counterbalance, right? So I pulled out these digit shapes, like the fingers. So therefore I pulled out this shape here. I already established this shape, and then I thought, that's not far enough. Doesn't matter. It's all good. Cool. And then again, I gotta return other designs. This is kind of cool how these sticks are propping up. See that contrast here? Like this triangle shape coming down pretty dramatically to the ground. And then we're gonna support that with an opposing force or movement with these sticks. More sticks. And I didn't really lock onto that visual interest until after I came back to it. So coming back with a fresh eye helps. Yeah, cool. Cool.